What's up everyone, it's Jim from All Point Samples, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how to make a gated kick. So we already made a tutorial about gated kicks, but it was not perfect. In this video I'll make a better kick. I'll make it 100% from scratch. I'm going to give you the ins and outs that you need to know to make a dope kick. There will be some pretty cool secret tricks that you didn't really see anywhere else. I'm 100% sure this video will help out a lot. So the kicks we will be making, or I'll try to aim to make a kick like this, it sounds like this. As you can hear, it's a nice punch, nice waveform, post-processing, and we have a nice crunch, nice reverb, everything. And it will look something like this, and I'll explain how I make everything from scratch. You have the punch reverb, the crunch, post-processing, etc. So make sure to watch the whole video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Here we go. So when you're making these kicks, the first thing I always want to start off with is the punch, because it's so important to make a punch and a nice punch reverb. And that's the whole thing about this thing. The crunch doesn't really matter at first. The first thing you want to get down is to have a very nice punch and a punch reverb. So let's work on that. What I'm going to do first is just take a punch that we already have here in one of our packs. And what you're going to look for is like a dirty punch. We want something like this. That's nice. We want something that's like, and it has a little bit of like dirt in it. I'm going to add this to the mixer and I'll organize this in a later stage. But let's take the punch. And the first thing I want to do is just route this to another channel. So this channel is going to be called the punch channel, of course. So this is like the total punch. And then we separate it here, because after this, we're going to work on reverb. But first, let's make this punch. So what I want to do is just distort it and get a better punch. So how I do this is just add distortion. So this one goes into this one, distort it. And the EQ goes in front and like, I want to get this frequency. This frequency really needs to be distorted and be better. So let's add another distortion and another EQ. Distort it more. Let's get rid of that limiter on the master. That really sucks. That's it. Okay, much better. So we can maybe work on the pogo. As you can see, I'm just trying to work through this whole thing and find different modes that might sound better. That's the thing, you can add distortion and then change the sample, make it better. So if we go in the punch channel now, I want to add a limiter, take the gain, make sure the ceiling is totally up. We're not wanting to remove the peaks. So zoom in like this, make it stop at some point, like that's better. So we'll make it really tight now. So this is a nice beginning, and what we're now lacking is a bass on top underneath. There's a little bit of bass, but we want like something punchy. So let's add this groove kick. It's in standard FL. Add it next to this one. And then we don't add this to the punch channel. If we do, we distort this one together with this one. We don't want that. So this one goes into another channel. So the second thing you do, like after you made the whole punch, is make reverb. I'll go back into the punch channel to actually improve it if needed. But the punch goes into one channel. And we're going to call this punch reverb 1. And then give it a color, like why not? That works always. And we're going to make punch reverb 2, but let's get into that after one is done. So punch reverb 1, you route this one into this channel. And now you make the punch send 100% wet with Valhalla Room, or Fruity Reverb is fine as well. I just like to work with Valhalla Room. As long as it's a nice clear reverb, it's fine. So then you want to add a Fruity limiter, create an automation clip of the gain, make sure the ceiling is totally off. We don't want limiting, we want gain automation. So organize it a bit. Here's our punch part, that's here, and the reverb part goes underneath. So how you want to make your reverb look is like this. In the punch, during, like you can see the punch is cut here. So during that part, you want a little bit of reverb. And afterwards, you really open it up to 50%, because 50% was the normal, like the standard volume. A Fruity limiter gain is always at 50%. So already pretty cool, because now we have this punch and punch reverb. So what I always add afterwards is just in the punch reverb, get rid of that bass, make sure you do type, high pass, and steep 8, type low pass, and we're going to muffle the highs. In front of this EQ, we're going to push some OTT, take down the depth and the downworth, and that's it. So then we route this punch to the second reverb channel. And in this one, we don't add the punch to this one. We can add the reverb that we generated and add that one to the second one. So now we have the reverb duplicated. It's kind of a double reverb layer. What I like to do in the second thing is take Little Alter Boy. It's very controversial, but I'm just going to use it to take the formant down. Now we get a little bit of character. So let's get rid of that low part as well, and the highs a little bit. And we need to add a limiter again to control the volume. So open up the ceiling, gain, automation, bam. So now we have 2 reverbs like this, and this one is not going to go on the punch, it's going to go afterwards. So now we have some high and a low reverb. We have a nice punch with a bass. So this reverb goes into this channel and this one goes into this one and in the final sense. So now both reverbs can go into a final sense. So final reverb. So we can control both of these at the same time. Pretty cool. So punch and punch reverb go into one channel like this. This is going to be called, of course, punch plus reverb. And to make this easy to grasp, I'm just going to make it a black color so you can see like, okay, this is a final scent. You can even give it an icon like this so you really know that everything comes together there. As you can see, the bass oomph of the punch goes directly into this punch plus reverb because we didn't want that distorted. So we need to make sure this punch goes in here. So nice. So before I start adding some bass and like a crunch for the kick, let's process this more. You might think that this is the final stage, like it sounds good, right? No, so first, this extra reverb layer you made, you can just change the tone a bit if you need it and just make it 100% white. If you can't see these buttons here, make sure you just select this one. You need to make sure this is on because then you can stereo separate it. So in this channel where everything comes together, let's add some stuff. OTT, as always, we can add more. We get that nice clarity. So I think we don't add distortion in here, by the way. This needs to be a clean channel. We just improve it with compression, clarity, corrective EQing, and some more stuff. So you can add a fruity compressor, which is fine, but I'm going to use isotope trash and use the dynamic part here. Just going to take this down a bit and put the ratio at around 4. And then we just play it. As you can see, it gives you a little bit of a spike in the beginning. We're going to just squash it together. And right now it's just too spiky. As you can see in the limiter, there's like a really big spike in the beginning, which we could remove like this. But I don't want to do that. It's kind of snappy. And the more I add this effect, by the way, you'll be adding this. Like if I add it a lot, you can see we get this spike. But because we add post-processing in a later stage, it kind of boosts the punch with the bass together, and then that spike in the beginning is like removed anyways. If we remove it now, we lose power. We have that in place. A thing that I like to add here as well is an inflator. Just put it at 0%, and now we're just making sure that it doesn't go over 0 dB. It's just squashed together, right? So like this. We can finally add an EQ and apply some corrective EQing. If you have too much bass, just get rid of that here. And otherwise, just improve it a bit. We might need some EQing like this, right? So now I can say that our punch and our reverb is practically done. So how we will get the bass in the game, it's fairly easy. Just take any of these kicks. I'm just going to take Groove Kick 24 and I'm going to get rid of that first click because like this click is going to not be needed at all. So here you can hear it. That's the click of the kick. But if I just get rid of that like this, we only have the bass. Let's take like smooth and bleeding. So then we have a really long tail. We can even put it at crossfade, but then it's really long. So I think smooth is the best. Generic is too short. So we take the smooth dick clicking mode. You can of course do this with a volume automation as well, like this. You can take a volume automation. You can like control the volume of the bass yourself like this. But I just like to put it on a declicking mode because it's easier, right? So that's it. So we have this bass here. Now it's too short. That's not enough. So what I like to do is just make it longer. Put this at auto. As you can see, if I don't make sure that it stops here, it gets a click. We don't want the click, so get rid of that. Like this. And now we have our crunch. So right now it's not that good, right? But we add the bass here. So the thing that people might do right now is just try to get this crunch better. And that's what I tried to do for a long time as well. You might be like, okay, this is a sub. I need to make it crunchy. How do I do it? Like, you know, if I do this, I get this really dirty sub. Like it's like a fart, you know? I don't want that. And if I add distortion, it's just not it. I don't like it. So what you do is very simple. You take the punch and the crunch, or like the bass. You take both of these, so the punch and the punch reverb, as you can see, go in this one, the bass here, and both of these go into one channel. What you now do is very simple. You just add distortion and open that hard clipper. So later we will just adjust every level to make it better. But right now, just start with this. So a thing you need to add afterwards when you add a distortion is just maybe more distortions. But it's weird, but like use a wave shaper. Okay, that's something. Then, after we have the distortion stage down, what I like to add is a corrective EQ. So we're going to use Pro Q for this, and I'm going to just get rid of that 300 Hz. I think it's nice for some type of kicks. You don't want to add it in every kick, but as you can see, this is like a pretty dirty frequency, right? So I just like to get rid of it a little bit. So what I feel like is that we can dynamically EQ this down a bit. And I'll get back in the punch, by the way, because the punch is very... I'll just change it. So we kind of improved it. As you can see, all levels are kind of equal. That's fine. Then we need more compression. As you can feel, the kick is like kind of like it's squashed together. I feel like the punch misses that click, that initial, like that power. So dynamics, take this down, take this down. Okay, that's nice. We can work with this groove kick, like the bass, in a minute. I'll just show you a little bit more post-processing. So here's the difference, by the way. Already much better. So then you want to like add a soft clipper, take down the threshold to like something like this, and just crank the post gain until it's really bad. So when you're making a kick and during the whole process your kick was like hitting -15 dB because you put everything like very soft like this, then you really need to squash that gain up. But if you didn't do that, then you really do need to squash it. So like vice versa, whatever. So let's call this kick send 1, give this a color, and let's give it an icon like this so we know that's the send. So now we have the crunch. Let's also call this crunch, by the way. It's just a bit easier to understand if you're looking at this thingy here. So crunch. There you go. Now we just squash this open. Better. I want to add an inflator. Squash open that effect. It's kind of getting there. What you can now do is just play around with a little bit of this stuff. So for example, this reverb channel might just be able to be put a little bit like this. Like just get rid of that bass in the reverb. Like only doing this already gets you a nice other variation. Okay, but that's it. Final reverb. As you can hear, it's very sharp. It's like... So what we can do is just take the final reverb send and clean up this reverb. Because we've now put final processing that distorts this reverb too much. So if we just work on that and just, clean that up, we'll get better. So what we can do now is make the reverb clearer. Because without any effects, you can see that the reverb sounds like this. It's a nice reverb, sounds like okay, all good. However, all the effects made it like really crunchy. And that's nice because we need that. But what I'm going to do is just take the final kick and the full reverb send and make those go into one channel. That's like a final thing that it needs to do. Because now we can have this final reverb go into this channel without having any of these post-processing effects. So now we can call this kick send 2, give this a like color as well, and this thing. Now we can see kick 1, kick 2. And in here, we have the final kick and the reverb going together. So where it goes together, add an inflator again, just to make sure that it doesn't go over 0 dB. As you can hear, you now have that extra reverb going in there as well. By the way, we have this punch here. Let me get back to that. Put it on generic. Just make sure it stops playing here. It has a big effect to change this, as you can see. So now we can play around with this groove kick. So maybe go to crossfade and change that. And we can change the pitch. What I like to do is take the pogo not to the left, but to the right. I think we're going the right way. We can change the punch now, see what happens. As you can see, that's like too high, what we had first, right? This one. So let's take it down 5. And we get variations that are better and less harsh. And the cool thing is we have a punch, and this punch immediately goes into this reverb channel and it generates reverb real time. We didn't use samples for the reverb, which is nice because if you use samples, it's great because it's visualized what you're doing in a different way than this automation clip. But then if you change the punch, you actually need to change the reverb as well to make it match the punch. So what I feel like is that the highs are too harsh right now, so... And this crunch needs to be longer. Nice. What is another trick that you can do? Well, Ozone 8, put this in front of everything. Let's make sure that that bass is mono. Nobody likes a stereoized bass. So let's just get everything under this like very low bass, like bam, that's it. Nice. So what we can do is just go in front of this. Take Serum Effects or LFO tool. I like LFO tool because in Serum Effects you also have the same filter, but you don't see what you're doing once you're tweaking it. Like if I'm tweaking this, I can see the filter I'm moving. In Serum Effects, you don't see that. So I like to go into any flanger. Just make sure that this thing is doing nothing. So take down this volume, like the LFO isn't moving anything. So we have this. And then we can just play around with this and find a sweet spot. So as you can see, different As you can see, different frequencies have different... As you can see, different frequencies have different effects, so... That's pretty nice. If we put this in front of everything, it gets really distorted, so... As you can see, by the way, all these cuts you have made in the EQ are made by this flanger. That's nice to put an EQ afterwards because you can see what you did, so... And it's so easy to now go back in this and just get a really, really cool punch, so... As you can see, you get so many variations by this filter alone, so... Now I just play around. You can also take other ones, so we can take like a weird one. Like phasers are nice as well. Just go into different filters, performance. But I think that flangers are like goated, so we take this one and we just take down the resonance if needed, and then nice. And now we just play around. The minus ones are dope too. Much better actually. But as you can see, it's very important that you first make this whole setup and then you go back and change the punches and the reverb and or like mainly the punch. And then you can of course change the crunch too. Like we have this sample, but we can go like, I might go with this one. Let's take down the punch a bit. Let's distort it a little bit more, like why not? Another really weird thing that nobody's doing because it really f***ed up the phasing. And it's stereo wise, so it's not really nice. But if you want to get really crazy, add little alter boy and just take down the form and listen up. If we just take this, in my opinion, it's a good kick. Good enough for me actually. So yeah, we did final post-processing. So what I'm going to do now is maybe we just need a little bit of dynamic EQ on the high end. Make it dynamic and just make it go up, right? A little bit, just because I want a little bit more presence. And maybe a little bit more reverb. And let's just render this. It's time to render. There we go. Trim it, normalize, boom. Now we have this kick and it definitely works. So I hope so. It's not clipping at the end, so. Change the pogo, change the pitch. Well, actually, here you go, -6. Let's put it through the processing again. So what I did is take the sample, pitch it down to whatever range, put it in a mixer, put it through this processing chain that we made. So, like, it's an immediately new kick, right? So as you can see, as long as you make this nice setup here, so with a tonal punch, bass oomph, we cut the volume of the punch, we make 2 reverb layers, so this one and this one, control it like this, add a simple bass kick, have this all go into one channel, add the punch, add processing, and then just like render it out, change the pitch, and just have that thing go through the same processing that you just made, and you have so many kicks, like... But yeah, there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. And as always, have a nice day. Bye.